What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Feels good to get out from behind that table, get back in the shop. I've got two exciting bikes for you. You're only going to see one in this video, but both of the bikes that I'm about to show you, I've done videos on. So whichever one you're watching now, as soon as this one's over, you can click over and watch the next one. Now, I'm not even sure if that made any sense the way that I chose to word that, so I'll explain it this way. Under this cover, we have the 2025 Lowrider ST. Under this cover, we have the 2025 CVO Road Glide ST. So whichever one of the videos is playing now, because I'm going to be lazy and use this intro for both, click over and watch the next one as soon as you're done with this one. And super quick, before we jump into the video, I want to remind you guys to check out Almost Famous Speed Co. That's my new clothing line. I have 3 t-shirt styles, 1 hat, some sticker packs. Very, very limited run. I don't know which ones I'll bring back after they're gone. Your support would be greatly appreciated. Now let's jump into the video. So this is the 2025 Lowrider ST in the brilliant red colorway, which I think is an amazing color on this bike for this year. We'll jump into all the things that have changed on it first, just so those that clicked on the video just to see that can see, you know, what's new, what's different, what's changed. And then those that haven't seen the bike, I'll do a little bit more of an in-depth review for you guys if you want to stick around to the end of the video. Now, before we jump into the big details, I want to point out one detail that I feel like is pretty big, and that is the missing gold that has been the standard on the Lowrider S and Lowrider ST models. Kind of since they came out, you would get the bronze looking wheels and then a Harley logo that would match that same bronze color. I liked it at first, and then it just got way overdone, and then they did it on the Fast Johnny Lowrider ST, and I just felt like those wheels didn't really go. Someone here at the dealership built a Fast Johnny ST and put silver wheels. I thought that looked hot, but the gold is gone. I don't know if it's for good, but it's at least gone on this one. The next big upgrade will be this, which, yes, there were some leaked pictures of this, so I don't think this is much of a surprise to a lot of people. But now it's 100% confirmed and legitimate. So this bike's not out. I'm not able to look up the specs at the time that I'm recording. So to the best of my knowledge, this engine produces, I think, about 11 more horsepower than the non-high output version. So, I mean, 11 horsepower is pretty good. If you guys have ever put parts on your bike chasing those horsepower numbers, you will know that trying to get 11 can be a little costly. The next thing I want to show you are these hand controls, because these look very, very different. So you have your cruise control, you kind of have your trip button here that will cycle through some stuff on the gauges. We'll get into all that. Left turn signal is on the left now, right's on the right, instead of both of them being on the left-hand side. On this side, you have your caution lights, traction control, your run and start switch is integrated into one. And then you have a mode button. So yes, we do have modes on the 2025 Lowrider ST. So as you'll see now, we've got an S letting us know we're in sport mode. We hit it again, we've got rain mode. Hit it one more time, you've got road mode. So you have 3 different modes on this bike: sport, rain, and road, which are the only 3 I really think you need. I'm really glad to see Harley doing that this year. I am kind of bummed on the gauge. As a lot of you know, I was really hoping for the Sportster S gauge, which, if you're not familiar, we happen to have one. So kind of convenient. We're doing this back here. A little dusty. But this is the gauge that I was wanting, and I've got to say, I feel like after saying that so many times, I've read enough comments to know that it's about 50-50. About half of you guys agree and you want to see this gauge. Half of you guys like kind of what Harley's doing on that thing already. But there is a lot of tech built into this little gauge. And the big thing I like is you can do nav. I know most of us are mounting our phone to our handlebars nowadays, but still it's nice to run nav through this and not have to burn your battery on your phone. But no Sportster S gauge, at least not this year. So walking back to the bike, I just noticed this for the first time. I didn't notice it earlier when I was here, and I know this view's not really doing it justice, but you have a really, really nice LED tail light, complete new redesign for this year with your tag light being up top here. Let me see if I can reach the brake and Still, yeah, super bright light, looks really, really good. And you'll also notice we have some LED turn signals in the rear, as well as LED turn signals in the front. Sorry if that's giving somebody a seizure with the flashing lights. So if you're an OG of the channel, you will know that I have bashed Harley for a long, long time. I started doing this channel in 2021. I think that's when the joke started, that Harley was not doing LED turn signals. Well, at least on this model, we finally get LED turn signals. Headlight appears to be the same exact headlight. So that's the only light on this bike that didn't change. Good job, Harley Davidson. I dig it. The next big change, I know a lot of you are gonna be happy to see, and I know I was, is that the saddlebags on this thing are the same size. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Harley used to do a shorter bag on this side to compensate for the exhaust. They would do a dual exhaust setup on this bike. This year they've gone into 2-in-1, which is allowing them a little more clearance. So your saddlebags are the same size. From the side, it didn't really affect it because you couldn't see both sides at one time. But from the back, it just kind of looked off, a little lopsided. So we'll talk about that since we've already kind of touched on it. This year, you're getting a 2-into-1 exhaust. This thing is going to be sewing machine quiet and not make any kind of decent power. And that's for EPA regulations. That's not a Harley Davidson thing. I would love to throw them under the bus as much as I can, but we can't do it this time. I'll start this bike up. Yeah, so you still don't have that hell yeah Harley Davidson sound. So this exhaust is gonna get thrown away. But what I like about this is Harley realized most people buying a Lowrider ST are putting a 2-into-1 pipe, so they've got plenty of clearance for these saddlebags. So they just went ahead and threw one on there. I would also like to point out this cam cover here, and this shape, this design is throwing a lot of people off because we first saw it on the CVOs that came with the variable valve timing. So now when some people see this design, they automatically assume, oh, it's a VVT bike. No, this is not. This is just the shape of the cover. I think that's just to keep things easy, simple for Harley across the board. So there is no VVT on this bike for the few people that would try to say that there is. So those are all the changes for the 2025 model year. We'll do a quick recap. So we got ride modes, we got some new controls, also different grips. I didn't mention in that. We did away with the gold. We got the high output 117. We got a really, really nice upgrade in the lighting department with the lights. Obviously, we got a new color for this year. Another thing I failed to mention when I was talking about controls is your brake is now adjustable. So you just spin this little dial and that will move this lever farther out or farther in depending on your hand size. And lastly, we got matching saddlebags, which seems silly to say, but that finally happened. And then obviously for this year, we got it in the brilliant red colorway, which I really, really dig. Kind of similar to the El Diablo bike, but I like this one more. I like this simple, clean look. So for those that are already familiar with the Lowrider ST, you guys, obviously, I'd love it if you stick around. Don't expect you to, because now I'm just gonna kind of go over the bike in a little more detail for those that aren't as familiar with it. So up until this bike came out last year, I said that this was my favorite Harley that they've ever made. And it was dethroned by this one, but only in certain circumstances. If I was to buy a brand new Harley Davidson today, it would 1000% be the Lowrider ST. For me, it is the perfect do-it-all machine. I'm not typically riding a ton of 2-up, so I don't necessarily need that extra cockpit area. So I originally thought these clamshell bags were gonna be way too small and not give me enough room. One of my buddies at Harley Corporate was nice enough to line up a Lowrider ST for me when I was staying in California for a week. That was my only transportation. And when I left the hotel, dude, I was going, 4 or 5 hours away at some point. And then obviously having to ride back same day. So I was taking everything I thought I might need, and there was plenty of space. I was always worried about, oh, my stuff's gonna fall out. None of that happened. It was more than enough room. And starting this year, you even get a little more room. So I think you would be just fine in that department. Also, my good buddy, Rocky Timms, that owns this dealership, Timms Harley Davidson here in Anderson, South Carolina, which I should have done earlier, but let's give a quick shout out to them as a huge, huge, huge thank you for continuing to let me do these videos. He built one of these and rode it to the 120th anniversary up in Milwaukee. I built a Road Glide and rode with him. He never wanted to swap, change. He was super comfortable on this thing the whole time. He did kind of set up a little tour pack with a backrest. Really, really neat setup. If I could find a photo, or he has a photo, it's been thrown up on the screen already, so this is that bike. If not, just imagine it. I want to say round trip, I ended up doing like 1,900 miles. Granted, we separated on the way back and I rode a little bit different way, but that's pretty good. If you can get to Milwaukee and back, you can do a 2,000 mile trip on this bike. I think it does plenty. For those that want music and that are not aware, it's hard to know who's watching these videos, so I feel really bad if you already know all this, but shout out to you for continuing to watch. You're the real MVP. Rockford Fosgate makes a piece that literally you pop this out, it pops in, and you get two little Rockford speaker cells that go in there. You can Bluetooth them to your phone, run all your audio. I run Cardo. Shout out to Cardo. There should be a link in my description for them. I run the helmet intercom. That's my preference for audio on a bike. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The most simple reason being I listen to probably really crappy music in most people's opinion, and I don't want to force other people to do it either. Now you'll notice that this bike does come with mid controls. I was looking at it earlier. The handlebar setup stock is really not that bad. I actually like the height. When I rode the one in California, it was completely stock and it was super comfortable. Seat was stock, bars were stock, and this is a guy that I change everything right away to set it up to fit me. Out of the box, fits me pretty good. Just for some perspective, I'm 5'11" and about 220 pounds. I absolutely loved it, but looking at this setup, I personally would roll these bars up a little more forward and then just roll the controls down to fit it. These are kind of leaned back, but you never know who's going to buy these bikes, so I kind of just set them up, and then once you buy it, they'll gladly help you get going with that. You've got a 5-gallon gas tank on this thing, which is really, really nice. The Softail I have is just barely over 3 gallons, so it makes for a lot of stops, especially when you build your engine like I've done, which fortunately on this bike, you really don't need to do. If you were to put a good exhaust and just let this thing breathe a little better, it would run really, really well. If you wanted to bump it up just a little bit, I know Star Racing, they have a Lowrider ST that they've done a 30/30 cam in, and I think that's pretty close to it. It makes some very impressive numbers. I don't want to spout them off because I can't remember right off the top of my head, but they were really impressive numbers for not a lot of work. But like I said, you really don't need to do that. And lastly, I want to touch on the suspension on this bike because I am pretty critical of Harley suspension, and in my opinion, rightfully so. This one is not bad at all. So when I was able to spend some time on this bike, and I've ridden a lot more than that one time when they let me borrow one, been fortunate enough to be out on the Lowrider ST quite a few times. I feel more comfortable on this bike because of the suspension than I do some of my personal bikes, and that's just because of how good this suspension is. Could it be better? Absolutely, but for Harley Davidson suspension, I found it really, really nice. Now, unfortunately, one big question that I don't have the answer to is what is this thing gonna be priced at? And that's because I'm filming this before it goes up, already to be edited and live by the time they're telling us what the price is. Touring bike saw a $2,000 increase. I'm really hoping the Softails didn't get an increase, but since they got some new features, I'm willing to bet they did. That's going to be it for this one, guys. Please subscribe if you're not already. I've got to hit 50K as quick as I can. I'll get into more details about that later. But subscribe if you're not already. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think. And don't forget to watch the CVO Road Glide ST video if you haven't already seen that one. Thanks, guys.